Sometimes we are looking but cannot see. There are opportunities to make our eyes open. Now, for many of you operating honest businesses here or doing an honest day's work, imagine setting up a bank account or applying for a credit card or a passport or a driving license and doing your forms and KYCs, which are better now. They're electronic and Aadhaar linkage and this OTP and that OTP and this scanned document. But even with all that, it's still tough. It'll still take you a month, maybe two, to set up a company with a bank account. It is quite remarkable how people who either abuse or corrupt the system can set up shell companies. It is even more remarkable how foreigners can set up these shell companies. And the second eye-opener for us who have been looking but not be seeing is an understanding that warfare is not simply done in Ghagra hot springs. It is done all around us. It has become infamous that the Pakistanis try to do economic warfare by festering us with drug money or by printing fake currency in order to destabilize the Indian economy. That is passé, that is old, it is predictable, and it has been demolished. What is not is how the others operate. They'll set up NGOs and front companies and do all sorts of hera-pheri and scams, all in an effort to both profit from this and use those illegal proceeds. So they will scam you and use the profits of the scam to engage in economic warfare against you. Does it sound familiar? Does it sound like the British Raj? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Now, the authorities claim, which is the Serious Fraud Investigations Office in India, the SFIO, that they have caught a mastermind who was escaping India because he had fled from NCR into Gaya in Bihar and he was about to sneak across the border into Nepal, from which he would have flown the coup. That this is some mastermind, okay? I always take the word mastermind with a pinch of salt because I don't think the masterminds are operating out of Delhi NCR. They were probably operating out of Shanghai or Hong Kong or other places. But nonetheless, if he's the local kingpin who can give us more information on what was going on, then we'll know better. But now that we've got him, what was going on is the big question. Let me open up this conversation. Sumit Peer is with us, Gautam Mukherjee, Sharad Kohli and Professor Arvind Tejawat are joining us on the broadcast. So let me ask the difficult question. Sharad Kohli, I mean, loan apps, dodgy arrests. Then in Gurgaon, they found this very exotic nightclub looking guest house. I don't even know what it was. I don't know whether it was a red light district for the Chinese operating in India, what it was. Now these arrests, what is going on? Are these just a bunch of Chinese crooks looking at the flaws in the Indian system and thinking of making a buck? Or do you see something more insidious?
No, the last part of what you said, Rishabh, is more appropriate, is more relevant and most likely. Now, they were facing two challenges while operating in India. One challenge was the money that they're making here. I'm taking the likes of Oppos and Vivos and Xiaomi's. They were making big money here and the loan apps. The challenge before them was how to siphon off this money out of the country. This was the first challenge, and to siphon off without paying taxes. So this was the second subsidiary challenge out of the first channel. The second challenge, Rishabh, was that how do they get into the country and stay here for longer? Because for a foreign company to be floating in India, you can have a foreign director, you could have a Chinese as a director, but the condition says there must be an Indian mandatorily in the board of directors. So they were having two challenges. One was taking out the money and not paying the taxes. The second challenge was how do they come to India and stay here for some time on business visa or work permit visa. So this is what germinated this fraud. And the fraud was to enable NewsX viewers to understand how it goes. When you appoint a director in a company in India, Rishabh, the latest procedure says that the director first needs to take a DSC. It is called Digital Signature Certificate. This is an electronic signature which you get after submitting your KYC. You also have to do a video call, by the way, which the Indians, found by these guys were doing. That is one. Second, you need to get a DIN. It's called Directors Identification Number, which these directors should be having. So this guy was helping the Chinese companies in finding, first of all, those Indian mandatory directors who were probably office boys or some field persons who had no clue whatsoever of what is going on. So this guy was helping the companies in getting the Indian, because getting the Indian director who's educated, who knows that there is a nefarious class of work going on in the company, would never agree, because he knows he's going to land up in jail someday or the other. So you pick up somebody who's uneducated, you pick up somebody who's not in connection with the corporate world, you pick up somebody who doesn't understand the corporate activities. So this
who
guy
basically doesn't understand what he's signing. You ask him to sign some papers and he doesn't know what he's signing.
Exactly. So they got these directors, and there were twofold objectives of these companies, Rishabh. One, these companies, the moment they were formed, they were able to issue work permits or business visa letters for these Chinese people to regularly come and visit, because let's not forget, MC has also found some illegitimately staying directors of China in India, who were staying beyond their visa or whatever. So these companies were helping those Chinese people coming here on a visa, not on a tourist visa, on a business visa or a work permit visa. Second objective that these companies were solving, Rishabh, was money laundering. Because when they had to take out the money from the country, they had to, launder it to another company, book expenses, and then transfer through Hawala, or probably transfer by showing expenses. We've done shows on your channel before, where the process has been explained as to how money was siphoned out without paying taxes. They ignored the transfer pricing provisions.
I mean, but if the biggest, most established companies were thousands of crores were doing exactly the same. But my question is, what are we seeing? Are we seeing, a flash in the pan? Are we seeing the tip of an iceberg? Because I don't know that there were so many Chinese directors floating around in India. Now I know. I didn't know they had a lovely luxury, multicolor, LED lit, dodgy place for whatever intents and purposes set up in Noida, but apparently they did. Dr. Kohli.
Yes, Rishabh, that was the first objective. One objective was to probably siphon off the money that they have made. Second objective was breach of privacy of the country, breach of the sovereignty of the country, where the data of Indians or information about India, vital information about India, Indian citizens, Indian corporate world, Indian commercial activities were siphoned off. Okay. So there is more, there can easily be more to it than the commercial pilferage, Rishabh.
Okay, which is what I'm trying to figure out. Gautam Mukherjee, so what is this? Are there some puzzle pieces? Our response clearly has some puzzle pieces. There are Chinese, the major mobile phone operators are being taught a rude lesson. The app guys are being taught a rude lesson. But I didn't really know that there were so many Chinese operating front companies here in India. It's an eye opener. If there are these many, do we assume there are others and they're all up to no good?
Yeah, I think it is part, Rishabh, of a attempt to subvert the financial system from the sides, create confusion, find out the weak spots, infiltrate, at the same time, take away monies so that their efforts are rewarded, but basically to do some harm to the financial system. Now, every single Chinese company in the country is not willing to play by the rules and, pay taxes or sell things legitimately. They are all caught out. And now that we are going about it in a blanket manner, we are catching them and going back to the sources.
No, because we've seen the principal players, Gautam Mukherjee, which are the principal mobile operators, right? I mean, they have a very public presence. Then we've seen a lot of these crypto exchanges have been raided primarily because of money laundering with Chinese fund charges. That's why the ED is investigating them. They're not investigating them for crypto fraud. It's because they're accused of helping these Chinese firms do money laundering. So that's another Chinese angle. Then we've seen the Chinese loan apps. Now we've seen these guys. So is this all, the question I'm trying to ask Gautam Mukherjee, is this all coincidental? That they were there, we've discovered them, so now we're going for them, or is it more insidious?
No, I don't think it's coincidental at all. It is across the board. Find me a Chinese company that's on the level. There isn't one. If even for the big stuff like 5G in which they have been banned. It sounds far-fetched, but we banned them because they would have embedded equipment that would help them spy. The Americans have banned their
F-35 because of a Chinese alloy. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, because there's a Chinese part in them, a magnet inside the engine. And so they're pretty insidious. They get in some way or the other. And the biggest carrot that the Indians continuously fall for is the business opportunity, the arbitrage. Things are cheaper from China.
Yeah, it's quick money, right? So you buy from China and sell at 10%, no brains required, just the arbitrage what Gautam Mukherjee is talking about. It's tempting, but that's how businesses run. That's how businessmen operate, okay? The object is to make money. Now, here is a lesson for which you don't have to look deep into history. It was called the carry trade. So, how did the British do this? The British exchequer and the taxpayer was not funding the great armies in India. The East India Company was. So what? You come to India, you get a patch of land. You grow opium in that land. You get that opium shipped to China. You get the Chinese addicted to opium. The profits you make, you raise an army in India. With raising the army, you occupy more land and thereby grow more opium. So that was how economic warfare was conducted. Sumit Peer, is economic warfare underway? Is this what is happening, or are these just business cases that have gone wrong?
Rishabh, the point here is that CCP believes in total warfare, which means economical, psychological, military, all kinds in type. This is one puzzle, one piece of the puzzle what we are discovering. China's intentions vis-a-vis India had never been good, maybe loan-ups. Remember, Rishabh, one day we discussed, there was one Chinese businessman, alleged businessman, who jumped a fence, a border fence from Bangladesh into Bengal, trying to do business here, who was caught by BSF. Now imagine somebody risking himself to be getting shot to do business in India. So, well, welcome to China. So Chinese businessman do it. Obviously, he was not a businessman. Obviously, he's not here for business. Now, if you look at the sequence of events, and on 3rd September, there was a raid on this ATM, Razorpay, and one more cash-free payments company. And after 7 or 10 days, we are seeing this kingpins and all being kind of caught. So they are trying to use our system. They are trying to use our companies. They are trying to use our system to weaken our currency. It is exactly what Pakistan was doing by printing, fake currencies. It's exactly what Pakistan was doing by smuggling opium into India. Chinese are using the finance of the India, the system of the India, to break the Indian system within. I mean, that is why the ED conducted these raids. Unless and until there was a sizable, tangible evidence, why should ED go and raise our own companies? Because we know there is some link and these companies are being used somehow or the other. So it is economical terrorism in action. Chinese are up to their old tricks. We are just getting up. What we are seeing is
So what's the scale? I don't know. Is it a handful of people? Is it worse because they're now every time we look, the amount of Chinese companies suddenly operating in India seems to be expanding. Let me get Professor Tejawat into this. Professor Tejawat, those were the two relevant points. I mentioned the historical context of the carry trade and how the British used to do it. We know the Pakistani example. It's very simple, really. You sell the drugs in India and use the profits from selling those drugs then to fund terrorism against India. Simultaneously get young people addicted to the drugs so that they damage their health and the economy, and then wage warfare. We've seen this happen in the past. The printing of the notes was the same logic. Is this the scale you suspect of Chinese operations, or is it some random chap called Dorste who we found in Gaya, no big deal?
Right, Rishabh. In 2003, at the time of Vajpayee's government, we established SFIO. So the thing is, now it has proven its relevance, and what the Chinese government claims that it's a people's government. So first we have to make our companies' laws more strong, which is too old. The company related act we passed in 1953, and now it's more than 6 decades or the 7 decades has been passed. So first we have to strengthen our law.
No, we have to strengthen our law, but some people would say our laws are too strong. If I want to set up a company, I'll be doing my DIN number and waiting for the USB flash drive with my digital signature, and it will take me 2 months to do KYCs to open a bank account. So we need to strengthen our laws, but also make them easier. I understand that. My fundamental question, Professor, was, is this some rogue operative, some chap unnamed or unseen person called Dorste and a group of gundas from China running a scam? Or is it economic warfare? Which do you suspect?
Yes, you are right, Rishabh. Very much true, and that's very much. That's why I'm saying that our officials shall move in a very organized way. They should collect all the information related, and then with a full information, they should launch a case against these fraud companies, and then the Indian government may raise the issues when they are going for the bilateral dialogues. So in that case, if it's a proxy or a kind of the economic wars, then we can fight with such condition in a very
Yeah, I
organized
think
way.
one thing we've learned is that having dialogues with China achieves nothing. So fire will have to be fought with fire, but first you'll have to clean your own house. Dr. Kohli, I think memory would serve me, and you probably were sitting with me on the day. All of this really began when the Chinese investment into a major Indian bank was discovered in public notification. Then you had the app bans, then you've had the crackdowns on the telecom operators, Huawei, the manufacturers. So I can all trace it back to a realization that very overtly the Chinese were acquiring. They had investments in major companies, Paytm being one of them, many others. Zomato, all of these have had Chinese investments, and some of these are very familiar household names. Have we understood, Dr. Kohli, the size of what could be a very holistic economic warfare option?
We have, Rishabh, and I would like to update Professor Rajabat that the Indian Companies Act is now updated to 2013. It's no more 1956 law. There is a 2013 2013 law, which is what prevents the companies from recklessly, going ahead with the procedures. As Rishabh also said, and I said in the beginning, you need a DSC and a digital signature. But the fact of the matter is, in April 2020, Rishabh, the law was passed when Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan were put in a certain class where the companies which were bordering India were not allowed a free run. That is, they could not bring in money, they could not have their directors here freely. China was added in April 2020 to that list. So from that day, China started finding it difficult that their directors or their nationals who were visiting India had to go through a home ministry check. And that is how, these guys are being nabbed now. These raids are being conducted. So, see, to me, this Dorste business looks like a one-off case for now. But considering that everything from China has got a Communist Party connection, I think this needs to be investigated. If merely providing directors, or was he into reporting of CCP, or was he carrying forward a CCP agenda? And allow me to say something, Rishabh, here at this point. India and China have a $135 billion bilateral trade, Rishabh, as of today. Yeah. Out of that, most of it is export. Now, you tell me, I have a question to ask. That you tell me, when $135 billion of bilateral trade is happening, most of it is import. Is it not expected that people from our country and people from their country to travel to each other's country? Because you can't do business by sitting here. You need to inspect a machine. You need to inspect a consignment. You need to get into a dialogue, a physical dialogue, and so on and so forth. Now, my question is, if we start ejecting these people, and we should eject these people, leave India notices are being given to these Chinese nationals, they are being deported as well. Now, if the same thing starts happening to the Indian nationals in China, I am opening the flip side of the debate now, Rishabh. Yeah. If same thing happens, then how are we going to sustain this indispensable $135 billion of bilateral trade?
Okay, it's an important question. Okay, for people watching the broadcast, bilateral trade was going on even during the Second World War when Germany and England were fighting each other, because that's how the global system works. China remains the source of many raw materials, from medicines and like paracetamol all the way up to lithium. So this is an important reality. Gautam Mukherjee, and that is the conundrum, that systems are designed for crooked people. Then systems are designed for crooked countries who might be using nefarious practices to wage war against you through these crooked people. But somewhere in between, there will be somebody who is just a businessman trying to make a living. What do we do?
There is only one way. If you're dealing with China, you have to wean yourself away. Now, it won't happen overnight. It's not happening anywhere around the globe overnight. But almost every country is experiencing some kind of chicanery, some kind of cheating, fraud, over-invoicing, under-invoicing, wrong goods, and so on. They will not play fair by the rules of business. And as a consequence, you cannot go on and on. the reason why we do have so much importation from China is because it is profitable, highly profitable. Now, despite that, if there are bans put on it, for example, all the Atmanirbhar military equipment was also highly profitable for a small section of people. Now, when you say, look, you can't import 68% of it, new routes are found. Similarly here, it isn't as if it is an unbreakable situation. It's just that we haven't shown enough a spine to actually get it done.
So if I would rephrase that we have almost naively, and it's never naively, it's always in cahoots because corrupting the system, as Gautam Mukherjee's mentioned, all these major arms suppliers, you think they didn't have their people here operating off their vodka bottles, okay? So let's assume that was happening. Let's not be naive to say that the system can't be corrupted. It often is. You need collusion. You needed collusion to run the Raj. 40,000 Britishers could not run a country of 300 million without collusion and cooperation. So let me get in Sumit Peer on this. Sumit Peer, my concern is business practices are nefarious, and not to say that American companies run clean orders and the British are not involved in 2/3 of global money laundering. Absolutely they are. So we understand that nefarious business practices happen. The world works like that. We've learned that from demonetization, that a cash economy shutting it down overnight is actually bad for the entire country, not good for it. Learning this, when it comes to the Chinese, what needs to be done? Do you subscribe to what Gautamji is saying, that we need to wean ourselves off?
Rishabh, I'll exactly start from where Gautamji left. You see, delinking of supply chains is a global phenomenon. I have friends and all who work with US MNCs, and they've been clearly told for next 5 years, we have to delink everything from China, and that's a work in progress. A lot of businesses coming to India. Point number one. Second is, when you deal with Americans or British or something, people might have gains, economic gains, but it is not the government of America or the British government who is trying to break your financial systems and defense systems. Here the problem is the CCP or the government of China is trying to break us. Sabotage and data stealing are the tools which are being used. And Rishabh, let's get out of the notion. If you look at the Indian defense for last 50 years, there's not even one connector which is made in China, yet our Air Force is rated higher than Chinese Air Force, and yet we have such a big third most powerful military in the world. If we can do that, why can't we get away with the Chinese goods and all? It's only a matter of time. You have the resolve. It will take time. It will be a bit painful, but do you want to sabotage your industry? Do you want to put your economic might at the state and mercy of Chinese and make some money? That is the call we'll take. It is a long and painful process. Look, we have already developed our infrastructure for semiconductors. Soon we'll not be dependent on the semiconductors from Taiwan and all, but at the same time, Americans have already pulled the plug. A lot of high range or intensity semiconductors are not being manufactured in Taiwan. They might move manufacturing to India. So if you stand up, the world will stand behind you. But the challenge is...
Okay, I would take it a step further. I would say if they've been making money off you, then Professor, what are the areas of avenues where that can be and I would say legitimately, okay, I'm not suggesting some sort of we should also set up front companies and do fraud in China. That's not what I'm suggesting. That very legitimately we can convert this, Professor Tejawat, in making money off the Chinese.
Yeah, true. Actually, finally whatever they are doing, the Indian citizens have to pay that cost. So I suppose all the officers should keep eyes on it. And what the other panelists said, that we have to continue the eye on these fraud companies. So I suppose that's the only way we can get rid of such kind of problems, Rishabh.
Okay, so I'm going to end this telecast for a lot of people. Some I know personally, and there are tens of thousands of people whose businesses and industry rely out of sourcing from China. There are a couple of lessons being learned here, and important ones. There's a lot of messaging going on, very public messaging. If you're accepting large tranches of Chinese investment, appointing Chinese directors, dealing with Chinese firms who might be Indians but have Chinese directors and could be accused of money laundering, please now be wary. Please be wary that you're keeping extensive records and making sure that you're as above board, because these Chinese linkages are now under scrutiny, as they should be. So if you're sourcing from China, if you're dealing and paying receipts, which making payments to Chinese companies, if you're dealing or have investments from Chinese funds into your company, appointing Chinese directors in your company, please be wary because this is under intense scrutiny. That's the pragmatic advice to give for now.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.